Alright, we're going to get started with the stream in a bit. It's currently 5:59, and I'm sure some of you guys will be jumping on in a bit. So we'll give it a couple minutes as soon as you guys are all ready. As soon as you guys start getting into the chat room, why don't you all just say hi so that I know you're there, and then I'll know when to get started. I hope you're all having a good weekend. I didn't do too much. I did call and wish my mother a happy Mother's Day, which was very nice. I couldn't find my clip-on microphone. It just literally disappeared from my living room, so I'm using my phone headphones, so hopefully the quality is not too bad. It doesn't sound too bad. I have the video playing in the background while this stream is going so that I can make sure the sound is good, but you never know with technology these days. What's up, Nick? Nice to see you join us. Someone just sent a message on Remind, so I should probably respond back to that. Oh, wrong one. There it is. You're at Vaughn's. Well, Mateo, you can jump back on at 8 o'clock. I'll be doing another stream again during that time. What I'll do is I'll go from 6 to 7:15-ish, 7:30 at the latest. Give myself a little break. And then I'll jump back on at 8 again. You guys are lucky that I care about y'all. On the bright side, I actually got more than 8 hours of sleep yesterday, which is a first in, like, since vacation, and that was a while ago. Yes, Nick, you can always ask questions, and essentially I'll go through the review with you guys. If no questions are asked, I'm just going to kind of go in the order of the entire review, but I will do questions first. And usually I do end up doing the whole review anyways. If you guys notice on that right-hand side, I put the equations up. Made a little image to try to not just help me, but help you guys out. I hope it's easy to read on your end there. I tried making the images go with the equations instead of just equations, equations, equations. Number 10? Sure. Let's take a look at that. Okay, so Nick, something you may or may not remember from in class, the answer key has the answers from number 10 and 11 switched. And one other thing to note, everyone, I found out what the mistake was. For number 11, there should not be a negative on that 12. So if you get rid of that negative, the graph will be correct. So let's jump right into it, Nick. So first off on this, I'm looking at the form and I'm saying that the x is squared. So this is going to be a vertical graph. So I'm going to go ahead and look at my column where it says x minus h squared equals 4p times y minus k. So that means this is h, this is k. So my vertex is going to be at 1, 2. And if you remember, we always take the opposite sign of whatever is listed there. The next thing we need to do work-wise is we need to solve for p. So remember that p is always going to be found by taking whatever number is here and setting it equal to 4p. So 4p equals negative 16. P therefore equals negative 4. Now from here, we're going to go ahead and use our equations for finding the focus. So our focus for this one is going to be h, k plus p. Well, we have h over there, and we have k, and now we have p. I can't write today. There we go. So then when we simplify this, we get 1, negative 2. Now we're going to go find the directrix, which is going to be our equation of y equals k minus p. So, just plug everything in again. Y equals is the part of the equation we need because it's the equation of the line that's going to go through the y-axis, so we need to leave y alone. K is going to be 2 minus negative 4. So then you'll see that just simply becomes 2 plus 4. So therefore y equals 6. So now we go ahead and we take all that information, besides just writing it down in our lines here, we're going to go ahead and plug that into our graph and make a little sketch of it. So 1, 2 is our vertex, 1, negative 2 is our focus, and then y equals 6 is our directrix. I can count. There we go. Now, in case you're uncertain about whether your graph is correct or not, a good guess and check is to look at your p-value and say, okay, is my directrix and my focus the same distance away from my vertex? And if you'll notice, 1, 2, 3, 4, boom, that's a good check. 1, 2, 3, 4. Boom, that's another check. So we're in the right direction. Now our last step is to just graph it. Now this parabola is not perfect. Doesn't have to be, it's just a sketch. So that's how our parabola is supposed to be graphed. So hopefully that was of help to you, Nick. Now while we're on the same topic, I'm going to go ahead and also do 11. And I'm going to show you guys that the answer keys are just basically switched. And also that that 12 shouldn't have been negative. Otherwise, everything is perfect. No problem, Nick. So here's one that we have to be careful for, because you guys will notice that my square is on y. So that means that here's my h now, and here's my k. So my vertex will be found at -3, -4. We're going to go ahead and set this +12, and I'll use the highlighter. We're going to set +12 equal to 4p. So 4p equals 12, therefore p equals 3. Okay, now let's use p to find our focus and directrix. Because the y is squared, we're going to go ahead and do the second set of equations, which are going to be h plus p, comma, k. Hi, Trinity. Boba tea. Okay, so -3 plus 3, comma, -4. So we're going to have 0, comma, -4. So that right there is going to be our focus. And then our directrix, the equation is going to be x equals h minus p. Now another good check to make sure, hey, am I doing the correct equations or am I, flippy-flopping on them? Make sure that this first part of the focus is kind of the opposite of that directrix. Those two are always related. They go in opposite directions. That's why one is plus, one is minus. So finishing up, oh, it's not letting me get rid of the highlight anymore. Oh, bye-bye. So therefore, x equals -3 minus 3. So x equals -6. Okay, so now right here, we're going to plot everything. X equals -6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that's going to be our vertical line going straight up and down. We have our vertex, which is at -3, -4. And then we have our focus, which is at 0, -4. So again, as another double check, what you can do is you can count your distance. That distance of 3 is the same as my p-value, so I'm good. 1, 2, 3, good. So now, we just graph. And there you have it. There is our parabola. So if we take a quick gander at the answer key for number 11, you'll notice that it's essentially that graph. So like I said, this answer key is for 11, and this answer key is for number 10. Alright, I've only done 2 problems now, so any other questions you guys have, feel free, just go ahead and chime in. I'll give you guys about a minute, then I'm going to just kind of move on and go through the rest of the review. Yes, I can go ahead and do number 12. So let's see here, 12. Write the equation with the given information. And then 16. Okay, we're going to go ahead and do both of those, all y'all. So Nick, on this problem here, I give you a focus and a directrix. So my focus and my directrix, I'm going to go ahead and plot. X equals 4, -2, -1. Directrix, -2, 1. Let me fix that. Yep. Nope, I made a mistake. -2, -1. There we go. Okay. So now, something you have to remember, Nick, is that your directrix and your focus are both the furthest things away from the vertex that you can be. The vertex is always going to lie exactly in the middle between the focus and directrix. So if I'm kind of counting on my spaces here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I've got 5 spaces. Wait, why can't I count? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It would help if I graphed the first line correctly. Yep, I graphed the first one incorrectly. This is why we have to double check our work. There we go. Okay, so let me try that again. You're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So the total distance there is 6. That means your vertex is going to lie halfway in the middle there. So there's my vertex. We're going to write out the coordinate, which is going to be 1, -1. And the other thing to notice to figure out, well, hypothetically, where is this graph going? Well, the vertex and the directrix position will always tell you where the parabola is going to face. The parabola always goes away from the dotted line. You can also think of it as that the parabola always goes toward the focus. So in this case, I know the parabola is pointing to the left. And if you check your little chart that I made for you guys on the notes, or if you look right here on the screen, you'll notice that it says right there for when the graph is pointing to the left, p is less than 0. Well, p being less than 0 means that p is negative. So that means that my p-value of 3 is actually going to be a -3. All I need are these 2 pieces of information and the equation. You're going to know which equation to use because of how your graph looks, or if you look at the information you're given, because look right here. It says x equals 4. There's only one spot in your chart where you have a directrix that says x equals, and that's when you have the equation of y minus k squared equals 4p x minus h. That is the only spot where you have it. So you're essentially doing what we did in the previous problems backwards. So we're going to go ahead and plug in k, we're going to plug in h, we're going to plug in p. One thing to note, and be very careful, right over here, this is h and this is k. They are switched over here, right? Because you have y minus k first. So just make sure you're not just plugging it in blindly, okay? Let me write that over here, my vertex. 1, -1. There's my h and k. P equals -3. With substitution, we're going to have y plus 1, because I'm doing the opposite of that sign, squared, equals 4 times -3, x plus, oh, my bad, x minus 1. See, I almost made that mistake. You got to watch out. Now, the last step for simplifying, y plus 1 squared equals -12, x minus 1. And that's all we do. Someone, I think it was in period 6, asked, could you do this algebraically? And technically you could, but that would assume that I never gave you a graph to work with or information that is easy to work with in a graph. It's going to be much easier to count out the spaces on your graph when you plot these. When you write out the coordinates, yes. So h always goes with x, k always goes with y. Don't plug in that 1 in for x, don't plug in that -1 in for y. They go in for h and k. You never, for your vertex problems, you will never plug in anything for x or y. Now, Trinity, you had a question on 16, so I'm going to jump right to that. Nick, I hope I was able to answer your question. Put the equation of the circle in standard form. All right. Boba T, get ready. We're going to do completing the square twice. Check this out. I'm going to use blue for my x variables. And remember, your first step should be to reorganize them if you can. or sorry, if you need to. In this case, I kind of already did it for you. Plus, and then this is where you have to leave a blank. This is our completing the square. Plus y squared plus 2y plus another blank equals -1. Now we're going to have 2 blanks on this side as well, because whatever we added to the left side, we're going to add as well to the other side. We have to make sure we balance our equation. So then here, we're going to go ahead and complete the square on x. Remember that in order to do that, you look for your middle term. And in this case, it's a -6. I'm going to take half of it and square it. So that's going to be 3 squared, -3 squared, which is going to be 9. So I'm going to add 9 here, as well as add 9 here. We're going to do the same thing for y. We're going to take half of the middle term here. Why can't I find my marker? There we go. We're going to take 2 divided by 2, square it. It's going to be 1 squared, which is just 1. So add 1 here, add 1 here. Now, the part that some of you might still be confused on is, how do I go from here to the next step? Well, this is where you have to remember you're factoring that. You're essentially ignoring everything over here, and I wish I could do a little arrow to kind of point around. You're ignoring everything that's red and to the right. You're only looking at the blue part right now. You need to factor that. And I showed you all the trick for this. I showed you all, hey, this is going to become x plus or minus something all squared. Well, what goes there is taking that middle number and taking half of it. So right now it's -6. Half of that is -3. So it's going to be x minus 3. And if you were to go ahead and FOIL that out, you'll notice, hey, you get the same polynomial that you had right above. Okay, if you don't want to do it that way, that's fine. You can try to factor this by hand. You know, you could do your little x chart, multiples of 9, that add to -6. You'll find that that only works if it's -3 and -3. Lo and behold, they're the same. Therefore, x minus 3 squared. So then we're going to do the same thing for our red part here for y. So half of 2 is 1. So this is just going to become y plus 1 all squared. Equals -1 plus 9 plus 1. That's going to be 9. Now, in the question it says, put the equation of the circle in standard form. So we did the first part. Now we need to give the radius. Okay. Well, to find my radius, Boba T, look at the last number. That last number is r squared. So r squared equals 9. Take the square root of both sides. R equals 3. And that's how we do those types of problems. I am putting an extra credit question on the test. Not sure if I reminded you all of that. It might look like this. It might look something a little different. It'll be a secret until then. Hopefully, if you remember how to do all your work, you'll be good. Free 5 points right there. So Trinity, hopefully that was of help to you. Essentially, we're going to do the same thing here on 17. The only difference with 17 versus 16, we just have to rearrange our terms. Yes, if you take half of the middle term, it will always equal the number in the parentheses. Every time, without fail. Let's go ahead and do 17 while we're at it, because might as well. So you guys will notice that I'm color coding my variables, and then I'm going to rewrite them. Alright. So now back to completing the square. We're going to go ahead and take half of 4 and then square that. So that's going to equal 4. Add 4 here, add 4 here. Do the same thing for y. And let me just highlight those numbers again, just to make sure people know where I'm pulling this sorcery from. So negative 8 divided by 2 squared. Okie dokie. So negative 4 squared, which is going to be 16. So add a 16 here, add a 16 here. So then right here, Trinity, if you want to jump in and participate, you're more than welcome to. There will be a slight delay in our interaction, so, you know, whatever, I don't care. Tell me what that x squared plus 4x plus 4 factors into. And while you're at it, go ahead and tell me what the y squared minus 8y plus 16 factors into. While you're doing that, I'm going to add these 3 together, which should be 25. Now here's the fun part. I gotta wait, because there'll be a slight delay. She'll say her answer, and then 10 seconds later, oh hey, I recognize it, and then you'll see it. It's always so funny. I hope you all were very good to your mothers on this Mother's Day. And I apologize if anybody does not have their mother with them. And Trinity's not responding. Poverty! Oh well. I'll just keep going then. It's been about a minute. So, finding our radius, we're going to look at this number right here. I did that because you guys see that dotted line, it always messes up with the number if I try to write next to it. Cool. So r squared equals 25, r equals 5. Okay. Do any of you have any other questions you want to ask me, inquire about? Yes, we can, Nick. So, Vertex, Focus, and Directrix. We want to extract these from the equation. Now, one thing to note, Nick, is that this equation here, when it's just a plain y squared or just a plain x, that always means that for that given coordinate, h or k is going to be 0. Since y is by itself, that means k equals 0. And similarly, because x is by itself, h is also going to equal 0. Now, when I say by itself, what I mean is to say that there's literally no parentheses written. We can technically say it's x minus 0. So that's why h is 0. And by that same logic, y minus 0 squared. We can think of it that way. That's the best way of looking at it. So my vertex will be 0, 0. And yes, Alyssa, I will get to number 14. So there's my vertex. Now to find the focus, we need our p-value. So 4p is going to equal negative 20. Therefore, p equals negative 5. remember you're dividing both sides by 4 to get p by itself. For my focus, that formula, since this is a y squared equation, I'm going to look on the side that says y squared, and I'm going to look and see that that says h plus p comma k. So that's going to be 0 minus 5 comma 0. So negative 5 comma 0. For my directrix, we're going to do that appropriate equation, which will be x equals h minus p. So hopefully that was of help to you, Nick. Anytime you have a plain variable, just think this is the easiest thing you're going to do. There's going to be a 0 involved. So Alyssa, we'll go ahead and do 14 next. I think I might have done 14. No, not yet. Not yet. We haven't done it yet. Trinity, no worries. Didn't know. So let's go ahead and jump to 14, Alyssa. Now you're given the focus and the directrix. So hopefully you plotted those. 4 comma 6, y equals negative 6. So 4 comma negative 6. Did I really put it there? I guess I did. Huh, it would help if I graphed it in the right spot, but still, I put it right on the edge. And then we have here, y equals negative 6. Oh man, Mr. T, you're such a jerk. I know. Okay, so hopefully you have this graph correct, Alyssa. Now I'm starting to question myself. Yeah, y equals negative 6, 4 comma 6. So Alyssa, you'll have to remember that the focus is up here, the directrix down here, mean that our vertex is going to lie halfway between those two. Now, someone said, well, Mr. T, can my vertex be over here? And the answer is no, because it has to be the shortest distance between these two. It's always halfway between that line. So if the focus was somewhere else, you would draw the line somewhere else. But it's always the shortest straight distance between the directrix and your focus. So if you count the spaces here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. It's going to be halfway between there. So that means that we're going to have the vertex right here. So there's my vertex. The coordinates for that are going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, comma 0. Now, P, remember we count the distance between the focus and the vertex, or between the directrix and the vertex. It's always going to be the same. In this case, P is going to equal 6. But my question to you is P going to be positive, or is P going to be negative? Draw the parabola that should be drawn from this. If you remember, that means that the parabola is going to go, might as well use black. It's going to go this way. It always goes away from the directrix. And since it's pointing up, going like this, that means that P is greater than 0, which means P is positive. So now we have the vertex and our P value. The only thing we need to make sure is we need to know which equation do we plug it into. Well, since it's pointing up, really, Mateo? Since it's pointing up, That means that we're going to use the x minus h formula. X minus h squared equals 4p y minus k. Okay, so plug in everything. X minus 4 squared equals 4 times 6 y minus 0. If you're trying to remember where I got the 0 and 4 from, that's my h, that's my k, and again, remember that you're always doing the opposite sign. Now, technically, there's no such thing as a negative 0, at least for your guys' level. No negative 0, so, not a big deal. But always remember you're taking the opposite sign. So then we're going to clean this up. X minus 4 squared equals 6 times 4, which is 24. Y minus 0 is just y. So boom. There's our equation. I modified the screen a bit. As you guys might be able to tell, I cut off a bit of the right side so that I can somewhat make that equation of the circle and equation of the parabola, a little cheat sheet show up. I hope that's helpful to you guys, because I kind of worked on that for about an hour before I got onto the live stream. So, Alyssa, was I able to be of help to you? If not, what other questions can I answer for you? H is the value of x on the graph is sort of, Mateo. We're not saying that it's x or y. We're saying that it is they are the coordinates of your vertex. So h will always be associated with the x value. Y will always be associated with the k value. But we never say that h is x, because for parabolas, we don't, at our level, we don't plug in anything for x or y. We leave x and y as variables. They are part of the equations. Number 3. Sure, I can do number 3. All right. So let's see here. Number 3. Yes. We're back to circles. So check this out, y'all. We are centered 2, negative 3. We go through the point 5, 4. So Alyssa, what you got to remember is we're going to have our base equation, x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. Can we write examples on the note card? Not specific examples, Blake. They can be, you can write out sort of part of an example that doesn't have numbers in it, and you can say, here's what you will do. You can write out your steps. Minju, we are going to do an extra credit question, but I'm not going to go over what it necessarily is. If you stick around for the video, I might hint at it. Depends on how nice I am. Let me get back to where I was. Yeah. So one thing I want to highly encourage you all to do, something you should be doing anyways, read the directions. Because if you start doing this problem and thinking, oh, I'm dealing with a parabola, and then you realize, I can't do this problem. And you're right, you can't, because it's not a parabola. Can't do that. Also, big dead giveaway. Centers occur in circles. Vertex occurs in parabola. So there's your big hint. So speaking of center, Alyssa, we have our h here, and we have our k here. So x minus 2 squared plus y plus 3 squared equals r squared. We're going to come back to this equation in the end, because we're going to need to plug in r squared back in here once we find it. Now, since I'm told that, hey, I'm going through this point, that means that x will equal 5 and y will equal 4. I can plug this ordered pair into my equation, and I am going to solve for r squared. So doing the work over here, 5 minus 2 squared plus 4 plus 3 squared equals r squared. Oh, extra people for people who don't use the note card. Yes, I am going to honor that deal. If you do not wish to use your note card, I will give you extra credit points. The only thing you have to be sure about is you have to show me that essentially you're not using the note card on the test. I'll sign off your test and say no note card, and then we'll go from there. Alyssa, in the original equation, it does say x minus h. So if I'm plugging in a positive 2 in for h, you are going to do the opposite. So just like Mateo said, you do the opposite. So the center says 2 comma negative 3. When it goes into the equation, it becomes x minus 2, y plus 3. Those are the only times you ever switch the signs, or when you're plugging the center or the vertex into your equation, or if you have your equation, you're trying to pull the numbers out to answer the question, what is the center or what is the vertex? Those are the only times you'd switch the signs. Because someone asked me about this one and said, Mr. T, aren't we supposed to switch the 5 and the 4? No, don't switch the sign. You're gonna mess things up real big time. So anyways, moving on. 3 squared plus 7 squared equals r squared. So 9 plus 49. So 58 is equal to r squared. Now, some of you might be tempted to take the square root of r squared and then... No, don't do that. Here's why. I just need r squared by itself. There's r squared. There's r squared. R squared equals 58. No, Mateo, the center does not equal the vertex. The center only occurs in circles. The vertex only occurs in parabolas. So back to you, Alyssa. We're going to plug in 58 for r squared. We're going to replace that entire number. So now watch. X minus 2 squared plus y plus 3 squared equals 58. You don't need to do any extra work. You don't need to... You just leave it like that. You're just replacing r squared with 58. I think we did number 12 already, Minjun, but I'll go over it again just so that you can kind of see the work. Alyssa, was this helpful to you? I'm hoping she says yes, because then otherwise I'm going to feel like a bad teacher. I'm moving the chat box so that I can actually see my work now. Yeah, okay. I could have swore we did 12 and 13, guys. I'll double check. Okay, we did. Yeah, we did 12, Minjun. You might have jumped in late, but essentially what we did was when you graph the directrix and you graph the focus, the vertex is going to lie halfway in between the two. Since the parabola has to graph and go away from the directrix, you're going to have that the equation is going to have a negative p-value. So you count out the spaces for p, and you'll notice that it's 3 spaces away. So p equals negative 3. Your vertex is 1 comma negative 1. And then you just simply replace it into the equation. 13. No, we haven't done 13, Nick. We can go ahead and do 13. Okay, there's no way... Okay, no, it is only 644. I, for some reason, thought it was 7:45. I was like, no, running late. So 13. Vertex at 2 comma negative 3. Directrix at x equals 7. So 7, 2 comma negative 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, did I really not give you a big enough graph? Okay, it's only one space off. It's only one space off. So x equals 7 would be right there. So this is our directrix. And then our vertex is 2 comma negative 3. So 1, 2, 2, 3. Vertex. Okay, so on this one, Nick, I give you the vertex and the directrix. There's no need to look for the focus, and here's why. If you remember that the parabola is going to go away from the directrix, you'll automatically know, okay, this means my p-value is going to be negative. So all we're going to do is count the spaces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So p is going to equal negative 5. Clara, for some reason on the other chat it showed your name as Clara, not Minju. My bad, dear. I'm so sorry. Happy Sunday, everyone. Okay, so there's my p-value. My vertex was given to us, 2 comma negative 3. When don't you find the focus? That's a good question. In this question, Alyssa, the directions simply say write the equation of the parabola. It's not telling us, hey, identify the focus, identify these things. They're giving us different parts, and we're essentially asking you to use your intuition or to use your rules and say, okay, I only need my p-value, I only need my vertex. So for questions where I ask you to just give me the equation, don't do any extra work. Some of you guys like to do the extra work, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. If you really want to, Alyssa, you could count it out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Boom, there's your focus. But you don't need it. It's not important for finding the equation we're about to do here. Now, one thing to, again, go back to, since my graph is pointing this way, that means that my equation is going to be y minus k squared. Okay, yeah, you want to be careful about that, Nick. Make sure you read the directions, guys. Do you guys see how I label this stuff right here? I label my focus, I label my vertex. I didn't do it in this one, but here's my directrix. Right, it's good to remember that, you know, what parts are you given. Now, if Nick had kept going with this the way he was going, he would have realized, oh, I get a decimal for my p-value. While it's not incorrect to have a decimal, so far I've only given you one problem that's had a decimal for a p-value, and ever since then we've had whole numbers. So I wouldn't worry about it. So anyways, back to here, my vertex, 2 comma negative 3. So there's my h, there's my k. So then y equals, or sorry, not y equals, y plus 3, because remember I take the opposite of negative 3, squared equals 4 times negative 5, x minus 2. So then here we're going to have, finally, y plus 3 squared equals negative 20 times x minus 2. And that right there is our equation of this parabola. How many of you guys have had dinner already? I had a very late lunch, so I'm not all too hungry right now, but I'm probably going to be hungry once we're done with this. first session, I had a spicy Italian from Subway, which some of you guys might laugh and say, Mr. T, you eat Subway all the time. But it was cheaper to eat at Subway than to eat at Coffee Bean. Number 15? Sure, I'll go ahead and do number 15. Okay, how can you determine just by looking at the equation that the vertex of the parabola is not at the origin? So let's talk about what happens when a parabola is at the origin. In terms of equations, if we're plugging in numbers, when something's at the origin, there's a 0 involved. So that means for my equation, and it doesn't matter which parabola I'm looking at, because realistically, h and k are always going to get plugged in. When I'm looking at my equations, when you plug in 0, the equations will always simplify. And so you'd have y squared equals some number times x. So the key thing to remember is that the vertex of the parabola not at the origin means that there's a number inside of the parentheses with your x and y. So in other words, h and k are not 0. So an example of an equation that is not going to be at the origin could be something like this. Y minus 1 squared equals, let's just make up a number, 4 x plus 1. Because I have numbers associated with x and y, I know for a fact, hey, these equations are not going to be at the origin. So now let's think about what happens if I change the problem. Like I say, oh, what if the equation's not on the x-axis, or the equation's not on the y-axis? So a point that's going to be on the x-axis, like this one here, is going to have some kind of an h value. Let's say it's -5, 0. Well, in this case, if it's on the x-axis, my k value is going to equal 0. And vice versa, if I take a look at something that's on the y-axis, my h value is always going to be 0. So if you can analyze an equation and you can see, oh, this equation is going to be on the y-axis, this equation is going to be on the x-axis, you'll know 90% of what your graph is supposed to look like just by recognizing the numbers. So, Nick, I'm not going to actually write out a sentence for you to answer this with. I want you to come up with one yourself. Okay, and if you want me to check to see if it's a good sentence or not, you can type it in the chat and I'll go ahead and give you the thumbs up or thumbs down. But try to summarize what I said. You know, make it simple. It's not at the origin because, and then describe to me what you know about h and k. Do any of you have any other questions that I can help with, that I can address? We've still got plenty of time, so don't feel rushed. And of course, if you jumped in at any point of the stream and you have no idea what I've covered, you can check out the earlier parts of the video. It doesn't look like I've done too much of the earlier stuff. I'm going to hope that you guys know what it is, but it definitely seems like the parabolas are still our weakest parts. Yeah, and then number 20 should look familiar because that's almost exactly the same question that I put on your homework. Let's try this one here. Oh, never mind. Nick read my mind. So number 20. Okay, so on number 20, Nick, one thing I recommend you do is make a graph of this. Don't even worry about how accurate it is, just make a graph. The vertex is at the origin. Our focus, don't lose your focus, guys, 0, -6. Directrix, y equals -10. So here's my vertex. Here is my focus, 0, -6. Directrix is at y equals 10, -10. So now, Nick, here's my question to you, because I've technically already answered it. Let's see if you can answer it now. Can a graph like this exist? Does a graph of a parabola exist where the focus and the directrix are on the same side as the vertex? That is your question that you must answer. Alright, so he says no. So all you have to do, Nick, you answer who you agree with, and then say why. You can literally even say the focus and directrix cannot be on the same side as of the vertex. They have to be on opposite sides of the vertex. I'm going to need to retitle this video. I just realized it said Unit 10 Review Packet. Got to change that so that it says Unit 11 Review Solutions. And then maybe we'll say Part 1 for the first people. You're welcome, Nick. Alyssa, we just did number 20. So I can only assume that you were away from the computer. But essentially what we said was that the focus and the directrix cannot be on the same side as your vertex. They have to be on opposite sides. So Katie is right. So Alyssa, hopefully I was able to answer your question. Key phrase, hopefully. While she's hopefully copying that down, I'm going to take a look at 19. So H is here, K is here. So my vertex is 4, 1. Got to find my P value. 4P equals 8. P equals 2. So then, since this is an x squared equation, that means we're going to do h comma k plus p. So therefore, 4 comma 1 plus 2. So that will be 4 comma 3. Directrix is going to be y equals k minus p. So y equals 1 minus 2. Y equals negative 1. Yes, so for the 8 o'clock stream, Mateo, I'm going to go ahead and do the study guide again. If there are no other questions, essentially in the next 5 minutes, I'm going to take my break, and then I'll go back on at 8. If you guys want to jump in again, you're more than welcome to see the work done again, or you can just replay this video. I'm okay with whatever you guys need. Again, feel free to send me any messages, and just let me know what I can do to help you all. Okay? You guys, I'm wishing you all the best of luck. This is a good chance for you all to get your grades up. And again, like, I understand this stuff might be difficult. I get it. But if you can wrap your heads around what we're doing, how we solve for P, how we use the equations, and you know how to use your own note card, you're going to be good. What I even recommend you might want to do is do the whole review on your own with your note card. Have it in front of you. Make sure that you write everything you need to in terms of directions. Like, are you going to do this? Are you going to do this? Even though I said don't use any specific examples, you can still write steps out. You can still write pieces of information. Like, always switch signs for the vertex and the center. Right? Draw your pictures. Do you guys see the pictures that are right above my head right here? Draw these. There's nothing wrong with doing that. These are good study tools. Okay, make sure you know your equations. Make sure you know that, hey, if my circle is not given the center, I know how to find the center. That equation's up there too, way up there. Yes, we can go ahead and do number 6, Mr. Nick. Given the graph, write the equation of the circle. Well, for a circle, we need only 2 things. We need the center, and we need the radius. The radius we can easily count out, because from the center, it's the same distance all the way around. Yes, sir, I'm going to be live again tonight at 8 o'clock. So right here, my radius is going to equal 2. Counting on my coordinates, 1, 2, 1, 2. My center is going to be negative 2, comma 2. So right here, we can go ahead and say x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. So then we have x plus 2 squared plus y minus 2 squared equals 2 squared. No, Angelica, I'm going to jump back on at 8 o'clock. I started this at 6. However, if you want to, you can go ahead and watch the video again. Once I end this stream, give it like 5 minutes. YouTube will render the video, and you can watch it if you want. If you can't stay up that late, which is fine. Or just come back on at 8. Last step, Nick. X plus 2 squared plus y minus 2 squared. I can write, I promise. Equals 4. Not 4 squared like I made that mistake on that video, just 4. Okay, so if there are no other questions in the next minute, I'm going to bid thee all adieu. What I'll probably do is I'll finish up this review and I'll have it set online so that you all can take a look at it whenever you need to. I think, yeah, just the first half of the review is the only thing I need to do. So it may be the case that you guys don't have questions on circles. Number 5, yeah. Let's take a look at that one. That'll be the last one, okay, Alyssa? So let's see here. Endpoints of my diameter. So the moment I see that phrase, endpoints, diameter, I should be thinking midpoint formula. So that means our center is going to be at x1 plus x2, all divided by 2, comma, y1 plus y2, all over 2. Now, the numbers that are going to go in for x1 and x2 are your x coordinates here. Your y coordinates are going to be the 4 and 6. So then we're going to have negative 3 minus 1 all over 2, comma, 4 plus 6 all over 2. So negative 4 over 2, comma, 10 over 2, which is going to be negative 2, comma, 5. This coordinate is our h and our k. Now what I'm going to do for you guys, and I hope it's not going to confuse anyone, I'm going to go ahead and show you guys what'll happen when you, because it doesn't matter from this step which other ordered pair you pick. You can choose to go with this one, you can choose to go with this one. It doesn't matter. I'm going to show you all the work and you're going to see, oh, okay, here is how we do it. For the homework, do we have to graph the circles? Only if it says in the directions graph the circle. So right here, Angie, all these say you can use the graphs, but you do not need it. These just say write the equations. Right here, these questions say graph the circle. So just make sure you're reading the directions. So right here, I'm going to work with my base equation, which is going to be x plus 2 squared plus y minus 5 squared equals r squared. So I'm going to call this scenario 1, where I'm working with this ordered pair. So I'm going to plug in negative 3 in for x. That's not beautiful. And I'm going to plug in 4 for y. So then we have negative 1 squared plus negative 1 squared equals r squared. So 1 plus 1 equals r squared. So r squared equals 2. That's scenario 1. Here's scenario 2, when I go ahead and plug this ordered pair in. And again, you don't have to do this. Once you're done plugging in the first one, you're done. Okay, but I'm going to show you guys that if you plug in the points correctly, you're going to get the same radius. You're going to get the same r squared. So in this one, negative 1 is now going to be x plus 2 squared plus 6 minus 5 squared. And some of you all are already seeing this. 1 squared plus 1 squared equals r squared. You'll notice, hey, we get the same r squared, which should happen. If you do this right, it should happen. So, your final equation, after all is said and done, erase that line, make it a little shorter. We're going to have x plus 2 squared plus y minus 5 squared equals 2. So Alyssa, I usually tell you guys in class, pick the ordered pair that has smaller numbers, and you'll usually be pretty well off. In this case, neither one was smaller than the other per se. So in the end, either one works out. Alright, so just, you know, maybe you have a preference. You say, okay, always go with the first order pair. That's fine. I don't care. Just make sure you plug in the correct X and Y. And also, please note, I did not switch the signs for either of those. Okay, so at this point I'm going to take a break. I'm going to go ahead and change the title of this video so that it actually says the correct title. Go ahead and keep working on the homework. I'll be back on at 8 for any additional questions. Hope you guys are enjoying your Sunday. And if I don't see you later tonight, I'll see you Monday. Alright, take care, y'all.